Okay guys, I'm a little upset. Won't start. Okay? A couple years ago I changed the fuel pump. When I turn the key, I don't hear anything. So I put a fuel gauge Schrader valve there on the fuel rail, and I have 20 pounds of pressure, but I do not hear the fuel pump. I took a fuel pump relay off the GTA and put it on here to make sure I rule that out. When it started acting up, you'd have to crank and crank and crank, and eventually it would start, because when you got your oil pressure kicked up, there's a fuel pump switch right back there. When the oil pressure kicks in, it's a fail safe, so it doesn't quit working when you're going down the road if your relay goes out. So to change this fuel pump is sort of a big deal. You have to drop the exhaust system, drop the suspension, take all this stuff off. I don't know if you guys can see or not, but all that has to come off because the gas tank is up there. It's a full day's job, and I don't feel like doing it again. So we are going to, and it's only been in there 2 or 3 years. So first thing we're going to do is you got to take these little brackets off. That's the only thing that really holds the carpet in right there. And see, the other one goes right there, and that's where your T-tops. What we're going to attempt to do is this carpet will peel back. You're going to lose, you got adhesive tape right there, but what we're going to do is we're going to cut all the way to here, in here, in here, so we can get to that gas tank to change those fuel lines. And the fuel line connection is actually down in here for the 4 lines. Isn't this stupid? Look at this. That's how you get to your shocks. You know, when like Sears used to say free insulation, you guys realize how much work that is to do that? Anyways, we're going to cut this out. We're going to try a nibbler first, and we're going to cut this out, and then we're going to cut all 4 fuel lines, and we're going to pull this fuel pump out. So I'm pretty aggravated that, you know, you put one in and it only lasts a couple years and it goes and quits working. I guess that's what you get when you get parts from AutoZone. So what I did, guys, was I took a small drill bit to drill a pilot hole, but I didn't go all the way through. I just made a divot. Then I got the biggest drill bit that I could get to fit in my drill. And because I didn't want to puncture through and hit the tank, and I was afraid with this little one, I was afraid I'd go all the way through and puncture the tank. So this one here is so shallow that it's not going to go pumping through. So then I went to Harbor Freight and I got me this little shear for $30. So I drilled my hole right here where I knew I'd be out of the way and wasn't hitting wiring. And this shear just goes through it like butter. I didn't want to put a grinder in here and have sparks going everywhere and all that kind of stuff. So let me go ahead and get her finished cutting the panel out. I really don't want to go over this lip because I have to put a piece of metal back in here, I think. I can just, if I leave that lip, I can. Okay guys, I wanted to stop and show you how easy it is with this thing. I gotta quit, man. It's gonna rain any minute. But anyways, here we are. Works like a charm. This metal is, I don't even know if it's 18 gauge. But anyways, here we are. Now we're going to cut these lines. I think I'm going to cut them right here. Right there maybe. I don't know. This is your line. This is your main fuel line coming off the fuel pump. This is the return. This is the, what do they call it? Evap, something like that. And that's the vent. We're gonna get us a vacuum cleaner out here and vacuum this mess up before. On the corners, I had to drill another pilot hole here and there because this thing doesn't like making right-hand 90-degree turns. Okay guys, next thing you do is you take a screwdriver and a hammer, and you're going to get on these little tabs right here and start hammering them till they spin around, and you can pull them out of, remove it from this notch. Okay, then you can raise it up. Then we're taking this line cutter and putting it on the line right there, but we can only go 60 degrees or so. Now be careful because gas came pouring out, but I'm going to try and stagger these cuts. So I'm going to do this one here, then this one here, and then this one probably there, and then this one I'll come back like here. But the only one that's really important is this one, because this is the pressure line. This is a return. Now to get the electrical connector out, we're going to drill these two rivets out so we can pull that out. So when you go to try and cut this line, you can only move this, I don't know, 30-40 degrees one side, then turn it over and flip the other, and you're going to put a little bit of a cut on the top and a little bit of cut on the bottom. And once you get that where it's cut on the top and the bottom, then just pull it up a little bit and wiggle it back and forth until it busts off. And to tighten, use you a pair of channel locks to tighten this wheel up, especially when it's upside down. And now that we got this one cut, we're going to cut the next one here where it's staggered a little bit. And then we're going to cut this one here, and then we should be able to get that one with no problem. Our next dilemma, do we want to cut these wires or do we want to drill these rivets out? Drill these two rivets out, because there's a connection right there. And the only way we're going to get this wire loose is either we're going to have to cut it, the 3 wires, or take that loose there. Now if you stagger these, it gives you room to get your cutter on each one, and you'll run it like this as much as you can one way, then flip it 180 and cut the rest. And then all you do is raise it up and wiggle them like this, and then they'll break off. So other than that, other than this one line and those 3 wires, we're ready to pull the whole unit out and replace it. Spend the extra $10 and get an AC Delco, because the pump that's in there was like an AutoZone and it's only 5 years old and it went out. So it's going to come with 2. You're not going to know what size until you get it out. Spare parts, hose. But I do know mine had a pulsulator, and I guess I need to put it back, or else this. We got this end cap that's going to go on here with the strainer. And we have 4 wires. So I guess until I get the old one out, I'm not really understanding. You only have 2 connections there, so wait and see when we get the other one out what we got to do here, because my guess is this fuel pump would fit a dozen vehicles, because it's got 4 wires here and only place for 2, and there's only 3 in the ground coming to the pump. If you notice, the end's different on that one than these. So we're going to go drill it out, the connection out, and see, that pulsulator goes right there. See? Pulsulator, ASM, or rubber coupling. And this would be the rubber coupling. But I know mine, I remember, had a pulsulator. Be very careful that you don't bend that float arm, or your gas tank's going to be off. Okay guys, I drilled the rivets out. And then I punched them out with a nail set and a hammer. And pushed the pins out, which reminds me I need to get them off the ground before I forget a flat tire from them. So anyway, so punch that out, pull the electric cable loose, then we pull her out, look in there and see if there's any crud, which looks pretty clean. So before we take it inside, we're gonna leave it sit here and let this gas evaporate. And we poured it out of the lines. It's amazing how much was still in there. And we're gonna put us a new sock on there. That's $15. And I think I'm gonna leave the wires alone and just change the clip, just change the fuel pump. But see, this is the pulsulator right there. Thing right there. Guys, there you go. It's done. You need two different size fuel lines. This one right here is your high pressure from the fuel pump. Okay, so I wanted to double clamp it, and it want to alternate the clamps, one going one way, one going the other way. And you have to buy high pressure fuel injection line hose. It needs to say fuel injector hose 3/8 of an inch or 9.6 millimeter. Okay, you can't just use regular fuel line. Now for the other lines, I just use run-of-the-mill fuel line because there's no pressure. This is the return line. So that's going to have a little bit of pressure, but there's nothing at the end. It just comes out right next to the fuel pump. These two other ones are vents. You could probably even use vacuum lines. So I did put that right there. I use that high pressure hose because that's the size. So what I use is dielectric grease. I put dielectric grease not on the hose, but on these stems on the lines, and coated them in dielectric grease and just slid that down and then slid it on the tubes. That way you can slide them all around. I put dielectric grease all over that O-ring that goes in there, and that helps. It helps slide it so you can set it home. So all you need is one of those, a hammer, screwdriver, nut driver, and some hoses, and you can cut it. I do really recommend a hose cutter. Bought this from Sears a long time ago, and it cuts the hoses straight and doesn't smash them down. So other than that, it's a pretty quick, easy job. And it runs. And it runs. I need to give it a bath big time. It needs a shower bad. But I did have to let it use the gas pedal to keep it running for a minute because it's got all this air in the lines. That fuel pump sure fixed it, runs great. For my next video, we're gonna have to try and figure out how in the world we're gonna fix this. The neighbor backed into me right here. And you can't Bondo or anything because you're going to be pulling right here and you're going to be pulling on Bondo. And I can't find another door anywhere.